A surprise acquisition in Major League Soccer. We've got some USL expansion news. And how does a team start a squad from absolute scratch? That and more on Wednesday's edition of Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. You found your way to Morning Kickaround, the show that dots the map of the American soccer landscape. My name is Robert Kerr, American soccer guy, local soccer guy, and to my side, Jason Davis, radio soccer guy, and also an American soccer guy. How you feeling this morning? Thanks for joining us all.
I'm good. I look good because I'm wearing my Mountains to Sea jersey that my man Zach sent us. Thank you very much to Zach.
Sent me. He sent you.
Sorry, Rob. Did I speak? I misspeak there. He sent me one. I don't know. Maybe you'll get one too. Shout out to Zach. But today's we're a big show today. Obviously, going to be doing an update on AC Boise as we continue our countdown to kickoff series on that brand new USL League One team. And it just so happens that we've got other USL League One news potentially, Rob. So it's going to be a good day.
Yep, trying to parse out what is just a press release and what is reality a bit here. Yeah, touching on Major League Soccer transfer news. It's the transfer season is actually pretty hot in Major League Soccer. And like you said, we are going to talk to AC Boise head coach Nate Miller. And we're going to parse through how do you start a team from absolutely scratch, going from nothing to something on the squad building side. Shout out to all of our MK Ultras. I see some of you lining up in the chat already. Phil Talk Sports and Danny Mendez, still the latest new MK Ultras. So if you want to get in on this, Mr. Shovelfoot.
I really like making you look bad, Rob. I really like I'm sorry. I don't know how this weird thing is like, Rob, you're wrong. You're so wrong. Mr. Shovelfoot is our newest member. Come on. We got a new Ultra. Shout out to Mr. Shovelfoot.
Shout out to Mr. Shovelfoot to give him his full name. And be sure to get yourself in the MK Ultras Morning Kickaround Discord server. There's a place where you put your intro, give you a little bit of a background on your soccer story and how you came to Morning Kickaround, in addition to bonus content, early access to content, and just great discussion and multiple threads on the Discord server from national teams all the way down to the local side and everywhere in between. So as we get going on the show, be sure to subscribe, tell a friend, and then even maybe become an MK Ultra while we're at it. You can also subscribe, become a member, and also support us on the social medias at MKickaround across all the various platforms.
I want to mention that when we get done with our countdown to kickoff segment with AC Boise and Nate Miller, we're going to hang out for a bit, talk to the Ultras, talk to you. Obviously, if you're not an Ultra, we'd like you to become one, but we might have some housekeeping to do and some stuff that we can talk about, community and all that. So I'm excited for that too.
All right, let's get to it. Let's start the show. Let's kick our long balls here on Wednesday's edition, Morning Kicker. Is no news good news on the labor negotiation front? We heard earlier this week that USL and USL Players Association had a pair of negotiation sessions set up for this week, one for Tuesday and one for tomorrow. Is no news good news? There hasn't been any declarations from either side, so hopefully there's some progress here.
Yeah, just to clarify sort of where we're at and what we know, Rob has heard that, that there are sessions happening. I don't think this is a secret. I think this is kind of out there that there are sessions happening. But, and I'll put up here just for a minute, this is the USLPA Instagram account, Rob. And I was looking at this today and thought it interesting because, when you're in the midst of a negotiation, are you posting things like messages from the president of the AFL-CIO? Are you posting things that are, clearly still trying to make your case about what you want from the next CBA when it comes to the USL players. That's going to be I'm not saying it means things are bad, but if they're out there still making their case publicly, it means they haven't really gotten where they want to go with the league. We reached out to the league directly, and as of the start of this show, have not heard anything back. I don't think the league's made a statement, Rob. I don't think there's been any public statements made by the league. I don't think that's unusual. The loudest is always going to be the players when they are trying to claw things from management that they don't have yet. Management has really no reason to go public with, well, we're doing this or we want that, because they're always going to look like they're the bad guys in this situation. And I think while you and I are mostly on the side of the players here, I think there has to be some accommodation for the idea that these negotiations, they go a particular way. And it could be, right, just from experience, it could be that the Players Association is being public with what they want and these statements by people, massive figures in the labor movement in America, and rattling the cage and then tomorrow there's a deal. It's possible. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm not saying it's happening. We don't have any sources telling us such, but it's possible.
Every time I've checked in with the USLPA, every time after a meeting, they say non-productive, and we've updated a couple times that the USLPA has sent the next proposal, and then when they come to meet with each other, there hasn't been any changes. Like ball in their court, they do nothing with the ball. Last week they met on Thursday. I heard on Friday that it was unproductive. Nothing happened. Good to see that there was more sessions scheduled. When there's no productive meetings and then they don't set a new schedule, that's when I think you should start getting nervous.
Yes.
You said that on Reddit, people are like starting to be like, is the season becoming in jeopardy? This and that. I feel a little bit of confidence because the players are still signing contracts and whatnot. Like the players individually, it seems like, are having faith that the status quo at the very least will continue. But as it stands now, nothing new has come out, and it should be added. Some of the clarifications that have come out in this process. You pulled up the USLPA's Instagram page and different information they're coming out. They did acknowledge that the majority of players don't make their minimums. Some of the biggest sticking points is the player minimums and healthcare, and just like blanket standards across the league. So the current offer is a 20% increase in the minimum wage. Players Union wants 40%, which it seems like the league balked at, or at least didn't agree to right out the bat. Will there be a meeting in the middle, or is that a non-starter? I did like that they clarified that most players are not on that very low minimum salary. Yeah, and it's also, we've been encouraged to remind folks that that minimum wage that is out there does not include the housing, the meals, and the other perks that come along with that.
Look, I'm going to be,
but actually, we should also update that there was one piece of progress that last time we heard from him, that the 12-month contract is something that they're willing to go forward with, which is already a 20% bump.
Yeah,
if I'm doing my 10 to 12 increase,
12-month contracts over 10-month contracts, something the USLPA has, and Connor Tobin told us, and he's been out there in the media saying that this is obviously a big part of it. Healthcare remains at the center of all of this, right? And the USLPA's position is, if the league does not mandate that the clubs must offer players healthcare, then there will be clubs who don't offer players healthcare, and they don't want that. They don't want any of their players to be in a situation where healthcare is not a benefit to the player. I'm to understand that, not from our own reporting, but from things that Connor Tobin has said, that they may be willing, the USLPA may be willing to start the season, and certainly training camps are going to be opening relatively soon. They may be willing to start the season and have these teams get together before a CBA is negotiated. So if he's saying that publicly, then that means they're not really at the point of, we want to strike over this, or we want to delay the start of the season. So when we put that question on the table, could there be a delay to the start of the season? And there are some big things happening in the world of USL. I think everybody's very aware of this. I think, as serious and as focused as Connor Tobin and the USLPA is, I think they recognize that in the long term, their players could benefit from things that the USL wants to start and do and accomplish. I will, like I said, I was going to be brutally honest here. I don't think the players have much leverage. Just don't think the players have much leverage here. And this is a function of a couple things. One of them being the level of soccer at which USL is playing. Now, do they want to be first division? Yes. There's a label of first division, and there's sort of a reality of first division level players in a country. And while nobody holds MLS up to the standard of the top 5 in Europe, we recognize that MLS is the highest standard of soccer in the United States. So when the USLPA says, we're not treated right, we want a better deal, the USL ownership can go, well, yeah, but we could probably find players who can do the job that you're doing. Now, do they want to go back? Do they want to go find a bunch of new players? Probably not, right? Probably not. But again, the owners are calculating here. And I'm not saying I'm on their side. I'm clearly not. But if you talk about leverage, I'm just not sure. Without a strike fund, without the ability to actually shut the league down, and obviously the most leverage the players have is when the season is already underway, or when it's too late to find new players, or to get people into those uniforms to play the games, right? But we've seen sports teams in the past, sports ownership in the past, find ways to keep the games going, even when the first level of players, the players who are already in the league, decide to strike, decide to stop playing. I think they would be willing to do that. And I think, again, leverage is a question here.
Yeah, indeed. One thing that we didn't ask Connor Tobin, and maybe if this process continues, we ask him, does USLPA have a rainy day fund to help players out, continue along the way? And, that would be the sort of leverage if they somehow did have some big pot to extend and pay people out while the potential
there is just no universe in which the USLPA has a significant strike fund. It just, based on the amount of money we're talking about here, if you're talking, you have to pay into a strike fund to have a strike fund. If players are making $50,000 a year, they don't have money to pay into a strike fund, Rob. It just doesn't exist, right? We're just talking about the level at which these players are making money. There's not going to be a significant strike fund to keep them going. Now, Scred Red says, as little leverage as they have, they got some big wins already. I suspect things will be wrapped up soon. I think that I hope that's the case. And again, I don't think it's beneficial for USL as a league, again, with this unique structure of individual franchises operating under their umbrella, but not technically within their control. I don't think it benefits USL to have a strike, have a lockout, have a delay to the season, have the players walk off the pitch, have the players going on television every chance they get when games are broadcast and wearing T-shirts that call out the league. That's not a good look for USL. Not, again, when they want to do all of these things like start a first division and institute pro rel. And I think if there is leverage for the players, it's largely down to that. It's largely down to that. They could gum up the works of the big plans that the USL has.
All right. We'll keep our eyes on this story as we go. You can like and support the show with a subscription or a channel membership, or you could also just hit super thanks like Mr. B. He donated $10 and says, thanks again for reporting on the USLPA situation. We'll continue to do so. So many ways to support the show. But right now, let's move on to our next topic. Let's roll. Is this a big surprise to Major League Soccer? Did this surprise you, Jason? German international Timo Werner on the verge of a move to the San Jose Earthquakes in a DP deal.
Couple of things here. One, Timo Werner was linked, I believe, to the New York Red Bulls. Obviously, that would make sense. Leaving Leipzig to go to New York Red Bulls is within the family of Red Bull clubs. And I think that's part of the reason why this is a surprise. The other part is, okay, so we clipped a tweet from Max Bretos, friend of mine, broadcaster. You know Max Bretos, right? Apple TV, LAFC. Max Bretos says this one is going to take a minute to register. Of the 30 clubs he could have gone to, San Jose felt like the 30th option. I'm here for it. Now, when Rob saw this, he went, oh, is San Jose really the 30th team on anybody's list
Yeah.
to join in Major League Soccer. Let's talk about that. San Jose number 30. And I was like, I don't think that's what Max meant.
You don't think
What
that's
Max meant,
I mean, okay, go ahead. What did
what
he mean
Max
here?
meant was specifically for a guy like Timo Werner, specifically for a German with his pedigree and his history. And yeah, say what you want about his recent career. He has obviously been a highly prized asset in European football. For him to go from Leipzig after the stops that he's made to San Jose, which is, a fine city, a fine American city, home to all the big tech companies and all that stuff. It's not New York. It's not LA. It's not Miami, right? It's not even Chicago in terms of the size and the metropolitan nature, or the German community for that matter, right? Chicago's got a significant German history. You would think culturally San Jose wouldn't be his first choice. I think that's what Max meant.
I did joke that maybe the aura and the magnetism of Bruce Arena is so that it goes across the Atlantic, and he just wanted to get in on a Bruce Arena joint in this stage of his career. But it is a bit of a surprise. I mean, he's still in his 20s. He has played for some super high profile teams. I guess if we're saying, or if we're juxtaposing that they're the 30th team, what would be a less, I would say, no offense to Utah, but I would have ranked maybe Salt Lake a little lower.
No, I do think Max is being a little facetious here, like a little. This is a little bit over the top from Max Bretos, but yes, I think RSL would have been a surprise. I think even a team like Cincinnati, who's been ambitious, would be a surprise for a guy like Team. Actually,
there's that German connection. They're leaning into the German thing.
They got a lot of German stuff going on. I don't know, like Columbus maybe, but yeah, Columbus it would be like a head scratcher a little bit. I say Kansas City would be a head scratcher. I don't think people that are not from here kind of appreciate what Kansas City is. But in terms of Timo Werner coming to MLS at 29, I don't know what the price tag is here, right? The reporting by Tom Bogert and Sebastian Stafford Bloor says that they're nearing a deal, presuming he would be a designated player, right? Werner would join as a new designated player for the Quakes. 29-year-old has 57 caps with Germany, 24 goals. He obviously had the bad stint at Chelsea. He's back at Leipzig. It does feel like this is a guy whose options in Europe are not what they used to be, and that's why he would consider MLS. And there is a little bit of like, oh, okay, here we go. A guy who just wants to come and, clock a check. I would hope that Bruce Arena knows what he's doing at San Jose and is signing a guy who really does want to help them win games. It is, again, in terms of like the location and the city, and it's a little bit of a surprise. I think he could be a successful, but I'm not going to put Timo Werner on Golden Boot level player in Major League Soccer until I see what he delivers for the Quakes initially. But I do think that if you're talking about the overall picture, right? Say what you want about Timo Werner. For a team like San Jose to actually be willing to drop some money on a player like Werner, who's not going to come cheap, right? There are plenty of teams in MLS who will go find a DP that most people haven't heard of, that maybe has been a very good player in Argentina or a very good player in Colombia or a very good player in a second-tier league in Europe. And you're like, oh, okay. They're using that they're spending that money on a guy who scored 15 goals in the Belgian Jupiler League or whatever, like, which is fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that if it works, clearly. But there is obviously a name recognition factor here with Timo Werner that makes this of a different kind in terms of DP signings. And has San Jose ever been that team, Rob? Have you ever known San Jose to be, hey, we're going to go spend a couple million, $5 million, $8 million on a player like Timo Werner? No.
That's another part of the surprise.
It says that Bruce Arena has some very good sway with John Fisher, the owner of the San Jose Earthquakes, to convince him that they should go sign a player like Werner. Right? Again, the proof will be in the pudding of Werner's performances for San Jose. But that to me says that Fisher and the ownership, the people who write the checks in San Jose, are listening to Bruce Arena and giving him a shot to make this team better and make this team relevant in Major League Soccer. Remember, they play in one of the smallest soccer-specific stadiums in the league. Nothing wrong with having any soccer-specific stadium. but it by no means meets the modern standard of a Cincinnati or a Columbus or an Austin, right? It's a step behind that. And their owner right now is most famous for moving his baseball team out of Oakland, taking them to Sacramento while he waits for a move to Las Vegas, which has not yet completely come together. Like, he is one of the most reviled sports owners in America. And here, somehow, Bruce Arena has gotten him to spend money on his soccer team. I think that's something. There's something there, Rob.
There's something cooking up there. And obviously year one under Bruce Arena was a big improvement. Obviously they didn't, win the league by any means, but there was improvement under year one of Bruce Arena. And the slight against Timo Werner has always been he doesn't convert as much chances as he should. He might score 1 out of 5. And I know a lot of on the comments on this news was, if you give him 100 chances, he'll score the goals you need. We'll see if San Jose provides those chances. And if Major League Soccer provides him the room and the space to be a super scorer, we shall see. But with the time...
Okay, it's worth pointing out, and I'll bring this in here from Riverside Grove, one of our ultras. Be like Riverside Grove, become an ultra, get your comments on screen. I think Timo has almost 0 minutes in the Bundesliga this year, and Leipzig couldn't even offload him to their own club in New Jersey. San Jose might regret this. Now, do we think that Timo Werner was offered to the Red Bulls and the Red Bulls balked? I mean, it's possible, right? Like that makes sense that there would be some skids greased by the relationship between the New York Red Bulls and RB Leipzig. No guarantee of that, but it's reasonable from Riverside Grove to presume that the first option would have been the Red Bulls, and the Red Bulls were like, no, we're okay. Like, Michael Bradley's got different plans over here. We don't need a team. And look, they went.
Could be the money. Right? Maybe they would like the player, but it's not the money they're willing to shell out.
Well, I mean, they also have Choupo-Moting up top, right? Like they already have their guy on some level, right? It's not, and Timo Werner that may clash with what they're already doing in New York. So there's something to that. The basic element of it might be it just doesn't work. Whether the New York Red Bulls would like to have Timo Werner or not, it might not work for their books or whatever, right? Okay. So if Timo Werner goes to San Jose, but Timo Werner, as Riverside Grove says, has not played 13 minutes. He has played in the Bundesliga this season. 13 minutes, and we are now into the Bundesliga winter break. Like what? So he is not a player who has been delivering since the return from Chelsea to Leipzig in a way that makes you go, you know what? This is going to work out for San Jose, right? This is going to be a thing, man. I don't know. The return from England, obviously, Timo Werner has been a guy that just couldn't make it work there. He does, over his first stint at Leipzig, he did have, nearly 100 goals. The Spurs loan didn't work last year. Now he's been back at Leipzig, but it's been very limited time. He's only made. He's only played 13 minutes. He has no starts. So, yeah, I mean, he's definitely damaged goods is the point.
In need of a move, and we shall see if that works. I'll keep our eyes on that, and definitely comment on what you think of this move, Timo Werner to San Jose, and you think if it'll be a success or not. Let us know. And also, are San Jose Earthquakes the 30th the lowest or highest desirable location in Major League Soccer to transfer?
Well, okay, the only way to do that, right? Like the most attractive MLS destinations, but you have to either put you have to put yourself in the shoes of a player like Timo Werner, or you have to, like me, where would I want to play if I was a player that was going to get an MLS contract? What club would be the most and least attractive to me? I think that is something interesting, and I do think this kind of related on some level to what the late great Grant Wall, friend of mine, used to do, which was do the MLS ambition rankings, and that's kind of tied into this.
All right, we do have one more topic to get in before our guest at the top of the hour, so let's move right along to our next topic here. All right. Clank, the USL expansion clanger, USL Deputy CEO and Chief Real Estate Officer Justin Papadakis is going to Medford, Oregon tonight to lead a pitch presentation over there. Medford, Oregon, a place with 82,000 people, 2.75 hours away from Eugene, Oregon. And they are set to, they are seeking a city council, trying to get a non-binding letter of intent from the USL in Medford, Oregon.
Yeah, this is from medfordalert.com, I believe. So we've got this clipping from this story about Medford, Oregon, which I'll admit, Rob, had not heard of Medford. Maybe I'd heard of it. Did not know where it was exactly. Didn't know much about it. Checked it out on a little bit. And we're not going to pretend to be experts on Medford, Oregon, but something like 85,000 people in the city of Medford. And you can imagine that there's a sprinkling of people who live around the city of Medford. So I don't know, we're talking 100 something thousand people in the general region, the general area of Medford, which is the seat of Jackson County, Oregon.
Yeah, don't hate on the county seat.
Yeah, it looks okay. The Metro, according to my sources, the internet, the Metro is 223,000 people, which is not tiny. Okay, it's not tiny. There's something there. Now, this story says Medford officials will reveal a proposal that could bring professional soccer and men and women's professional men's and women's. It does say men's and women's soccer, which I think is interesting. To Medford, Justin Papadakis leading a presentation. This is interesting because this is not Medford going, you know what we need? We need a soccer team. We got a stadium. There's all the soccer stuff happening. We need a soccer team. This is USL. And we imagined, and I don't know if this is the case, we imagined Justin Papadakis going through Google Earth and just like, where's a stadium? Oh, they got one in Medford. Call Medford. Let's get them on the horn and see if we can pitch them a USL team.
Yeah, you looked up the stadium. One of the sites that they are reviewing for this during this meeting is this 9,000 plus seater high school stadium owned by the Medford School District. And yeah, we were joking, like, is Papadakis just scanning Google Earth for any kind of cool looking stadiums across the United States?
Yeah, it kind of has that vibe. Now, obviously, like, I don't know. It looks like there's some construction or some,
at least in that picture.
There's a dirt stuff. Yeah, I don't know how old this picture is. But this is the picture of the stadium there in Medford. As you can see, that like most high school football stadiums don't have covered stands. That's not
around
normal.
Here. Not
in my part of the world.
I wonder if they're like a football juggernaut out there.
They could be like, yeah, Medford could be ruling high school football. Medford high school football rules. I don't know. It says South and North, so they must have had some all-star game when this picture was taken. Something like that. Or maybe there's a Medford South and a Medford North high school, and they both play on this in this venue, which would be nice. So Oregon cover is normal, is what I'm being told, probably because of rain, right? Probably because can't let people just get soaked all the time. Look, it's interesting. There's Medford, by the way, and I did a little map here to show you where AC Boise is, and we're going to be talking about Boise in a minute with Nate Miller, and where Sporting Cascades is in Eugene, which they've delayed their launch to 2027. Rob, is that the update on Eugene, right? On Sporting Cascades?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they pinned that 2027. I know there was people asking if there's a little bit of vagueness with the Eugene there. They just said delay. I don't know if they necessarily put the pin on the 27 or not.
Okay, well, delay. So at some point in the future, Sporting Cascades hopes to be playing professional soccer in Eugene, Oregon, which you can tell is like kind of halfway between Portland, where obviously there's an MLS team and an NWSL team, and Medford, which is down there in Southern Oregon. And then you got Boise over there. So just locally. And this is interesting in terms of that regionality that you could create if a team launches in Medford, because now you've got trips for Sporting Cascades when they play and Boise, who are starting this year, that are much easier than let's get on a plane and fly to Florida, that kind of stuff, right? In terms of costs and things like that. So, that's obviously going to be very important at the level that USL 1 operates.
But yeah, I think the takeaway from this that really makes me have the feeling of where is this going and what is the energy behind this? Is USL scouting cities, or are clubs looking to go pro is it chicken and the egg situation? Does it matter if it's the league pitching to them or vice versa? Is there already a soccer culture in Medford, New Jersey, or Medford, Oregon? Excuse me. Don't, I'll watch my toes there. But yeah, is there already a soccer scene out there? Let us know. And curious if this is fulfilling a need or if they're trying to create nothing for something because they have a covered high school stadium in a big metro area.
And I try not to be too judgy about this. Like I'm kind of a cynic at heart, Rob. Like there's some cynical elements about your guy Jason over here, where it's like, all right, what's going on here? Is this like okay? Like for Boise, for example, obviously there is momentum and interest and passion for the game in Boise, and people who are from Boise who are like, let's put this together, let's go. We're starting a team in Boise. If that's not what's happening in Medford, does it necessarily mean it's a bad thing? No. I mean, you can obviously find people who care about soccer that are either from Medford or would come to Medford and could make this work. It's just a different approach that I have to think is, something we have to kind of parse as part of the growth of USL. Because if it's not real demand, it's artificial demand, then you worry about the bottom falling out at some point. But as you said, Clang the Clanger, and thank you to West Hender NM, who's clanging the clanger for you. There's the clanger. Let's
the USL expansion clanger has been rung, and just to round it all off, Justin Papadakis, the expansion CEO, let me get his title right. The USL Deputy CEO and Chief Real Estate Officer Justin Papadakis going to Medford, Oregon, and proposing the city council them get into a relationship to explore expansion possibilities. All right, thank you for all of our subscribers and our MK Ultras, and our super thanks from Mr. Bob earlier in the show. Support the show however you will. Excited for our next segment. We have Coach Nate Miller on our countdown to kickoff with AC Boise coming up next here on Wednesday's Morning Kickaround. This is Countdown to Kickoff with AC Boise on Morning Kickaround. The ticker, 52 days remaining until the club's debut match in USL League One. And here to describe building his squad from scratch, we got AC Boise head coach Nate Miller. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Great to be with you guys. Thank you.
I feel bad, Nate, when I talk to coaches, because I always feel like I'm taking you guys away from things you really need to be doing right now rather than talking to a couple of jokers on a show. But we do appreciate the time. You saw it. We said it. Is it in your head, 52 days? Are you thinking in terms of a timeline right now?
Actually, when you said that, I didn't know that. And that sounds a lot closer than it feels. So we have a lot to do. But, yeah, I mean, that's – March 7th feels like a long way off, but it'll come fast. Everything's kind of really happening right now in real time, all the players arriving. So 52 days sounds close, though, that's for sure.
Let me ask you, before we dive into the guys that you've signed and what your team looks like right now, give people a little bit of your story, how you ended up in the game and obviously how you ended up in Boise.
Sure. Well, it's a long one, so I won't bore everyone with them. So
we like long stories. Come on.
Yeah. So prior to coming to AC Boise, I was an assistant coach with Pablo Mastroeni in Real Salt Lake for 2 years. That was a really great experience. Before that, I was in San Diego for 4 years, San Diego Loyal. I did my time there as a head coach of San Diego Loyal before the club folded with the new MLS team coming in. And then prior to that, I was Landon Donovan's assistant there. And we built, that expansion franchise from the ground up. And that was actually my second expansion team. So this is my third. So I don't know how many people have had the pleasure to say that. It's a lot of work, but
that's an American soccer story, Nate. You're living American soccer.
Could you get any more unique USL niche than that? Right. And before that, I was at Lansing Ignite, which was a US in the inaugural year of USL League One in 2019. That was a really rewarding experience on the field. That was like a one-year wonder there before I went to San Diego. Before that, I was coaching in League Two and in college for quite a long time in Michigan. So, I've been kind of around all levels of the game. I've been fortunate to kind of our route's gone a lot of different ways I never would have thought. But we're just thrilled. Moving my family here to Boise is the perfect fit for us, and looking for a long-term project to really build something in a city that's just bursting at the seams for football and just in general as a city.
Coach Nate Miller, American expansion specialist on the show here with us. And we'll get to some of your players that you've already gotten on board. And it looks like there is, I received a note that one of your signings actually stems back from your Lansing Ignite days. But I want to ask you, you've made some stops at these expansion, what is there a different feeling in Boise, and what made you try another new project?
Yeah, every feeling's been a bit different. I'll say the Boise feeling is like I could not, when I was following the project from afar, it was, I didn't know much about Boise, to be honest with you. Since accepting this position, I've learned that it's the fastest growing city in our country, and everyone seems to be moving here, and it's just a beautiful city, and people love the game, people love sports, but there's really no professional sports here. San Diego, like, it does remind me a little bit of San Diego, from the sense that like the supporters have, like, even before a ball is kicked, the supporters have this just like intense, passionate, like, love for a club. Like they've been waiting a long time, and now it's here. And so they're like ready for it. The cities are very different vibes, for sure. But I will say, like, what makes this place unique from a club standpoint is what ownership has done. I mean, when you build your own stadium, and when you have your own infrastructure, that's built to last, right? I think that the challenge that USL teams have is when you're a tenant, when you're renting, every year can be a challenge, and you're kind of fighting uphill. But the ownership group here is so strong, and I think they have every corner covered of what you need to be a really buttoned up professional franchise. And that really attracted me to come here, just because of how professional everything's going to be, and and how the club's going to grow in the leagues. I didn't come here to be in League One for hopefully too long. So we'll see how that goes.
Ooh, why is that? Okay, we got a pro rel reference. All right.
Well, maybe not that. Maybe we'll see what happens.
Okay. All right. Well, there's a lot of possibilities.
I like the boldness.
Yeah, no. Obviously, okay. So now you're the coach. You got to put the product on the field. You got to go out there and win games. You got to have players to do that, and we are seeing the players join. The first one here, I'll throw it up on the screen. This is Blake Bodley, who is an Idaho native. So you got a local guy. I'm sure the club loves that from the marketing side of it. But what does Blake bring to you on the field?
Well, yeah. So I coached Blake in 2021 on loan. When he was a Portland Timbers player, we brought him in on loan, and then in 2023 we signed him permanently in San Diego. And that year he set the all-time single USL record in assists. And so he's a top player. And so when I accepted this job, look, there's not that many like big time pros that have come from Boise yet. We hope to change that over the years with bringing young players through. But Blake is one of my favorite players I've coached. Extremely talented player, fits how we want to play perfectly. And so when I accepted this job, there's only one player that I knew we had to sign first to create momentum, really to honor the city. And Blake would have grown up in a market where he had to leave at 15 to go to Portland to pursue his dream. And so, what a better way to signal to the market that we're a serious, we're going to bring in one of the top players at his position in the USL to start this club. And I mean all of USL, not League One. I mean, Blake was pursued by every USL championship team after his time in Tampa the last 2 years. So, the recruitment process was great. Obviously, it was easier because I know Blake personally. We have a great relationship. But just working with ownership and making it possible to bring a player of that caliber here, I think is special for the city. Everyone it means more when it's your player. It means more to the player. It means more to the city. And I think by announcing him first, it was, hey, we're going to be about Boise, first of all. Second of all, we're going to be about winning, which is really important to bring Blake here. And we're not going to just, pick off the fringes and bring in the guys that kind of want to be here last minute. We went after the guys we really wanted. And Blake was the number one target to bring in.
That's a great note. And if you could expand on that, there's 4 or 5 more players that are announced as AC Boise signings. Can you speak to the going from nothing to something inaugural year? You said you're looking for players that really, really want to be there. Is there something like some qualities about this players, and what kind of a team are you looking to build here from nothing?
Yeah, it's a unique experience to be an expansion team. And so there's a certain type of mental approach to like wanting to be involved in the community, first of all. Second of all, like it is a challenge to start something from start, but guys that either I know through competing against them that I feel like want to establish a culture, not just join a great culture, but go through the work of building something. It's extremely rewarding, but it's also extremely difficult. I think by going after players who I trust and players who I know will represent the city really well in the field, like soccer is a very, close community. People talk. And I think by going after certain characters and leaders and players right off the bat, I kind of set a signal to the player market and what we're about. We're going to come in, like, I think everyone can see just from social media and everything that the club off the field is doing really well and is really buttoned up. But everyone then kind of waits to see, like, what are you going to be on the field? And so for me, I wanted to, make sure that we signed like 5 to 8 very experienced winners in these leagues that know how to win in these leagues. I've lifted trophies. And some of these players are players I've pursued in the past and tried to sign. Some of these players have connections to me over time. And some of these players are just from scouting and just from knowing the leagues. And just my time in MLS, I was still watching the league all the time. So knowing the new players coming in, and always, kind of keeping track of and creating, schematics of who I thought were great fits and how we were going to play.
Nate, how do you envision? I mean, obviously you'll have watched the league, you'll have done your scouting, you'll have, checked in on the level, but how do you envision your team playing? And how do you see the level of USL League One right now? I mean, we're 4 or 5 years into this division existing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the league's interesting this year, right? Because it's so much bigger, so many more teams. And so that's going to be interesting. The last time I was in it was an expansion team. So no one had any idea what was going to happen. And I think that year there were, some really good players that immediately after the first year moved on to championship teams. And I think that's really a good thing. I think what we need to make sure our league is one that teams and clubs are very willing to like push players on, but they have to be compensated for it. And so I think this year, I think it's going to be very interesting because each team is building their roster very differently. And one thing, like I get messages and calls all the time. It seems like there's excitement and buzz about the roster we're building, but like you don't win on paper at all. You don't win on your social media announcements of who you signed. You win on match day. And I think League One is a league where players you've never heard of can make a great name for themselves. And sometimes the players that you don't think are going to make an impact by the end of the year are extremely important players who are now thought of completely differently. And it's a great league to give rookies a chance. How we want to play, like, look, I think my teams have always tried to play dominant football. That's the way my analysts would describe it. We can get into the weeds and all the minutia of the game model and our identity and, how we train. But I think at the end of the day, like when we don't have the ball, we are pressing high to get the ball. We very much want to have like an attacking field tilt. And when we have the ball, we want to be very ball dominant. But a term I use with my team all the time is vertical possession. Like we want to play through you. We want to play through you. We want to counter press to get the ball back, and we want to attack your goal constantly. Something that's important for me is that our product is really good entertainment. People have a lot of choices of where to spend their money, every weekend with their family. And for me, it's important that the game model, our identity, how we play really connects with the people of the city and that they love it. They feel like that's us. They feel like I love to go see that. I like to be with my favorite people. Usually people go to games with people who they love spending time with. And so what that product on the field has to be something that is extremely entertaining and evokes a lot of emotion. And I hope we can do that for the people here.
And it definitely sounds like you've definitely had some guys in mind. You've brought some guys that you're familiar with that you said are willing to generate or put in the plant the seeds of the future culture to come. And I was actually speaking with Lansing Ignite super supporter and one of the founders of Lansing Common, Eric Walcott, just yesterday. And he mentioned that Nick Moon came from the Ignite. And was he actually an open tryout player that made your team?
Yeah. Well, hello to Eric. That's great. That's a blast from the past. Yeah, Nick Moon is a great story. Nick Moon is one of those players that this is, I think, why League One is perfect. Nick Moon is a big talent. I think Nick Moon could have played in MLS. He almost had a couple opportunities that just slipped through the fingers. But yeah, I mean, we had a closed door trial where we brought in players that we really liked. I saw Nick play in like an indoor training facility in Chicago when I was scouting. And I was like, who is that kid? I want that kid. I really like him. He had just finished his time at UW Milwaukee. Great athletic profile, had a lot of tools. We brought him in. We signed him after a trial, and he became like an all-league player that year in Lansing. And then after that, he, as the club folded, he went to Indy 11 in the USL Championship. But then I also brought him to San Diego and coached him for 2 years in San Diego, and that was a special time together. So he's gone through a few injury issues over his career, and it's kind of had some ups and downs, but I trust Nick as a human being more than anything. And whenever he's been with me, he's always performed at a really high level. So on his day, for me, Nick Moon is like unplayable from the wing. So for us as a staff, we just need to make sure we create an environment that we get the best out of him, because if he is healthy and flying, Nick Moon is one of the most enjoyable players to watch for sure.
So Nate, you talked, go ahead. I'm sorry, Rob, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I did. You said you saw him at an indoor facility in Chicago as part of your scouting. So I wanted to ask, like, how deep is this scouting going? I mean, how common is that to go to those sort of small places to find these talented players? That's
a great question, Rob. I think every club and situation and like the type of roster you're going to build, you have to like take different routes. Like, for example, this evening, I'm flying to Panama for 4 days to go look at players. It's a league where it's a very young league. It's a league where they are starting to produce a lot of very great athletes, and they're playing all over the world. You can see their national team is doing great, and there's a really deep talent pool there. So I think every club, as football evolves in our country, I think you need to be willing to look at different markets. When I was at Lansing, we had a very tiny budget, and so I was like, okay, I knew the Midwest market really well. I knew the coaches. I knew just a lot of the people who knew the players. And so, yeah, in Chicago, there was always this group in the offseason that would go train. I knew there were always good players there, usually guys in college coming out of college. And I was going to watch actually a player that I also ended up signing, Xavier Gomez, who was our first signing there. And I found Nick Moon there too. And so I think the key to really good recruitment is not just sitting behind your computer, and watching Y Scout videos. I think you got to go. That's part of it. Part of it is watching the league and knowing the players. But if you're just receiving players from agents and everyone like that, I think you end up building poor rosters. I think you got to go. I think you got to go find the players, see them in the flesh, and just understand exactly what you're looking for. So everyone's different, though. That's just kind of my style.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, Nate, because I mean, we are in this moment where clubs are trying to leverage all these tools. Y Scout is massive. I remember, I won't out them, but I remember a club hiring an executive who himself had a scouting tool and network that he brought to the club. And I was like, this seems like a conflict of interest. And now we're in this thing where you're picking names off a page, or you're looking at numbers rather than looking at players. And I'm sure there are people who say, well, analytics have to be part of this. Like the way that you find players in a modern world, it has to evolve. But I guess it's interesting that you have joined a club where they're giving you the opportunity to do it the way that you want to do it, where you trust yourself to find the players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And look, just to be fair, Jason, that's a great point. I think analytics are a big part of it. I think they are a big part of it when you're comparing the same thing, meaning in leagues that are comparable, in situations that are comparable. I think analytics are extremely important because your eyes do lie to you, and you have to trust certain analytics. But the analytic tool has to be strong. I think there's a lot of tools out there that spit out things, but I found out over time working with these things that the back end of it's not so strong. And so you're getting analytics, but you better know that the tool you're using is the right tool. And so I think that for me, at certain levels, you cannot compare, for example, we're bringing in a player that used to be in the USL Championship. We haven't announced him yet because I'm not going to say his name, but he's been playing for a conference league team in Kosovo. Okay. How do you compare a team in Kosovo to a USL League One team? That's really hard. So when you look at data, you're like, I don't know about this. This just put on the video, and the games are played very differently, right? And so I think that there are leagues over time that you understand are comparable leagues and you can rely on it. But for me, like, I think the best value you get is when you go see players in person, because it's like when players are on trial. I tell players all the time, you don't need 30 coaches to like you. You need one. That's all you need to change your life, to get your first chance. And so for me, like, I don't necessarily at this level where I am right now, it's different than MLS, want to find a player that everyone loves, because I'm not going to be able to afford the player. I need to find a player that I love, that in 3 years is doing bigger things. So I think that's important to me. And then at the same time, then building this roster with players who are going to be here a long time. Like, the core of what we're building here needs to be guys that can take us up through the leagues. And then the rest of the roster that we assemble are guys that are like high potential guys that we get to coach and help. And that's kind of the way I look at it.
One more thing, since it has kind of come up, and obviously, look, you don't do this if you don't want to win, and you don't want to be ambitious, and you don't want to go up, right? And the idea that, by the way, just as an American soccer guy who's been doing this for 2 decades, Nate, talking about soccer in America, for any soccer person in this country to be able to say we want to go up is mind blowing. I mean, I know we're not quite there yet with it, actually happening, but it's mind blowing to consider that. I guess I'm curious for you as a coach, maybe how that's changed, how you think about the job you do here, or your path as a coach, right? Because you have been in a couple different places before any of this was on the table.
Yeah, look, I don't view my path as a coach. Well, I've learned a lot. But I don't view my path as a coach as like this linear thing where I'm climbing this ladder. Maybe some people looked at this move and go, man, why would you leave MLS? But like, for me, like, I'm a husband with 3 kids. I'm a dad. There are things that in your life that, like, you need to be pursuing that aren't just like, what's the next job that pays the most money, that's at the highest level. Like, no, for me, like, I love to work with teams. I love to build cultures. I love to do you learn over time, like, what gives you joy, what you're meant to be doing. And you have to follow that rather than quote unquote what the market tells you should be doing. So I think it's important for me to stay true to myself. As far as like the pathway, like USL, like when the USL kind of really put, a marker down in the last, I would say 18 months of where they're going to go. Like, I think that was a really important, like, and really significant move in the landscape of our country. Now it's up to the league to follow through on this. It's a lot of work, and like, it's easy to say something. It's like, for you guys, like, how many stadium renderings have you seen? You're like, that's pretty, but yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. And so it's the same thing for me. It's like, this is great, but there's a lot of work to do. Now, it seems like the league has hired some people who are pretty significant people who are going to get this done. But I think it's really important that, like, the league sticks to this timeline and we really push this right now. So I really hope with what has been laid out, I hope there's really great follow through. And that's not my world. That's not what I can do. All I can do is prepare my team to win and create the best environment I can. So.
Yeah, fingers crossed for the follow through from the league, but just kind of like to review, there's some exciting things you're saying. Like, I really like your approach, saying that find the right analytics tools mixed in with a balance of the eyeball test and seeing players in person, I think is a great approach. And the fact that the club is budgeting those in-person trips, and you said you're going to Panama for 4 days to scout players. I do have a final question. Seeing as how many folks, I imagine, from Panama probably have not heard of Boise, Idaho, how will you describe it if you get into a conversation with one of these players?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's one of those things where, look, I think when we live in this country, we take it for granted. People are desperate to move to the US. Like, I mean, you can just see that in MLS, like, where players are coming from now. And it's like, I think sometimes we have this like kind of like negative view ourselves about the soccer in our country. But I can tell you from being overseas, the football in our country and the level is viewed very positively. Like, wow, like, that was quick. Like, I think MLS is the 9th, 8th best league in the world now. Like, that's significant. So I think that players want to move to the US. Yeah, they will definitely not know where Boise is, but they also won't know where Nashville is, and they don't know where a lot of places are. And so they know LA, they know New York, and they know Miami. That's pretty much all they know. And so it really is like, you have to understand, like, this country, aside from football, is just opportunity. People really want to move here. And for me, from a footballing perspective, it's kind of creating, like, can you go to a country like Panama or a different country of similar profile, come here, and I think players are starting. I'm signing a Brazilian striker who's a young player from an academy there. And what you're going to see is players look at the US now because of precedent as a place where you can make your jump from. Right. So like it used to be like this was a destination after you weren't a good player anymore. Right now, I think it's changing where our youth players, domestic players, and foreign. I mean, you see a lot, like at Real Salt Lake, we were bringing in a lot of Colombians and young players and selling them on. So now it's in the market knows now that there are a lot of eyeballs on the US. And if you perform well in these leagues, you can move to Europe or move somewhere else. Yeah.
That's great. So, how's your Spanish, Nate? How's your Spanish? Is it good?
Worse than my kids. My kids do Spanish immersion at school, so they learn Spanish.
Oh, so they're showing you up. So,
I should bring my son with me if I really want it good.
Wait, if I was doing, I have a 4-year-old who speaks Spanish because my wife is Puerto Rican, and I'm learning. I would take my 4-year-old to Panama if I was doing the job you're doing.
Awesome.
So I understand. Awesome. I understand.
So 52 days and counting until AC Boise's debut season in USL League One. Head coach Nate Miller, thank you so much for joining us here on Morning Kickaround, sir.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Incredible stuff. Really good. Thanks to Nate.
All right. We are going to come back and talk all about it. Hit subscribe, become a member. We'll talk about it in just a minute. Let's get to our next topic here on Morning Kickaround. Well, great stuff there on Countdown to Kickoff with AC Boise. Let's break it down, guys. What did you think of that? We got a great look at what it might take, what a head coach going into the debut season for a brand new club. That's some good stuff there.
No, that was great. Nate's obviously a very personable guy and, very forthright with what he's doing there in Boise. I thought that was awesome. I thought that was incredible. I didn't get a shit to share it, but I'll do it here very quickly. The schedule for AC Boise, just for anybody who's wondering, March 7th, that's 52 days away. That's what we're talking about. They think they go to Sarasota. It's small on the screen, but they go to Sarasota. So they cross the country to play their first ever match. Then they're in Omaha. Then they're in South Georgia to play the Tormenta before their home opener against Spokane Velocity, which is practically a derby considering location. Not really, but I don't know what the drive is. It's probably significant, but still, that's closer than most teams that they'll play on April 4th when they open up that building. So really good stuff there from Nate Miller. I appreciate him coming on the show and giving us some of his time because he's a busy guy. Got to prepare to go to Panama.
Yeah, that's wild that he's getting that kind of a budget to do so. He was talking about the Lansing Ignite days, and he was working on shoestrings going to, pickup games. And here he is, traveling across country, out of the country, to scout players, which is pretty exciting. And it definitely shows the level of investment that Boise's putting into this.
Do we get an exclusive bit of news too? We didn't get a name. Did we get an exclusive bit of news that Boise's signing a Brazilian striker? Did we hear that? Did I catch that?
He did say that. My eyebrows went up to about here when he said it. But yeah, he's getting some from Kosovo and someone from Brazil. Or at least a player who played in Kosovo, and then a Brazilian striker. Wow.
International Boise. Yeah, that look, obviously that's the marketplace. And some Americans, again, we highlighted some of the American players that they've already signed. So it's coming together in Boise. Again, they're in a race to get on the field and get some good soccer. We didn't get into like what expectations are in year one in Boise. I can't imagine that ownership is going to be like, you got to win or you're out of here. It's not that level of intensity yet. But we do want clubs where there's accountability when it comes to winning games. Right? We want ambitious clubs who want to win. One of the arguments about the lack of promotion and relegation in this country, one of the things people use as evidence of why pro-rel needs to happen in this country is that there seem to be a lot of teams who kind of go, yeah, we're not going to get relegated, so it's fine. Or maybe we'll make the playoffs in 9th place. It's fine. And look,
rooting for a good day out instead of a whole
right.
success.
Right. I think getting into getting into value judgments about why we do soccer gets real sticky real fast, and you start to get into a place of like shaming people for just enjoying some soccer rather than you have to be passionate, and if you're not demanding that your team win, what kind of fan are you? And if you're not screaming about a loss or what is it that Jurgen Klinsmann used to say about American players? Is that they didn't get accosted in the grocery store for losing the game, and that was a bad thing, right?
And Brad Friedel also said that.
Brad Friedel loves to talk about this too. Like Brad Friedel's a guy who absolutely believes in pro rel and the pressure it brings and all these things. And look, I definitely think that if we're talking about the end game of the United States winning a World Cup on the men's side, or the end game of us having the top soccer league in the world, those things are necessary. Right? Those things are absolutely necessary, or something that creates an environment where pressure is always on the table is necessary. Because if you don't have accountability, the players don't push themselves. They're not a demand. The club isn't like, well, we got to get every signing right, or this. Like, you have to have that. I get it. But there is also something to be said for, like, can we just have a team that represents our community and it'd be kind of fun to go and support them? And like the vibes around the team, like, if you get into a place and maybe you can have these things happening alongside each other in the same club culture or in the same community, right? The hardcore, diehard, ultra style fans that demand winning, that will come down on the coach, come down on the general manager, come down on the owner if things aren't good, and scream about it and yell about it and go on the internet and post and be in the stands, protest. Like, maybe you can have that and have the people that are they're like, yay for our team, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe it's something about we got to start with one level before we raise our game to the next level, Rob. Right? Like when you and I, you work in high level amateur soccer in this country. Those fans aren't going out to watch Oakland County and screaming about losses. They're not screaming bloody murder when the team loses a game. They're not doing that, right? And we went to Albuquerque and we watched a game for a second division team in this country, right? One that's 5, 6, 7 years old, whatever Albuquerque is now, New Mexico United rather. I didn't see a lot of people who looked like they would be throwing a tantrum if the team wasn't living up to their standard of winning.
The night would have been more fun.
I saw a lot of people who just wanted to support a team that represented Albuquerque and New Mexico, right? Mm-hmm. And so again, this is the needle that we're trying to thread. So here's Chris. This is interesting. Personally, I don't think sports should be life or death. I don't think I should fear for my safety every time I go out to a match. I'm not talking about violence, by the way. I'm not talking about like people committing violence in the name of supporting their team. I'm talking about people just being angry, like bringing an angry vibe to supporting their club because they're not doing enough to win. Right? Like the way Celtic was about Wilfred Nancy, for example, the fans around Celtic, right? And by the way, I'm not judging them and saying they're wrong. I'm saying that the reason Celtic has those fans and the reason Celtic can be that way is because Celtic is 100 and whatever years old. And those families have grown up in Glasgow and in Scotland supporting Celtic. And it is crucial to their identity that Celtic win games.
Yeah. And I think that we might get there with time. Yeah.
Whereas in Albuquerque or in Boise or any number of places in America, even in some MLS cities, that is not a thing, right? It's not as important that their team win for them to be a fan. And I know people get also judgy. Like if you say, just support your team, like, why are you screaming and yelling or calling people names or going on the internet? And I'm not saying that anybody here is doing that, but going on the internet and yelling about a player who missed a chance or in their comments on Instagram. Like, why do you just support your team? But that comes off as like a Pollyanna kind of approach to soccer. And we're not doing it right. Americans don't do it right if we're not screaming and yelling bloody murder over winning. We're not demanding more at all times. We're doing it. There are YouTube channels whose entire vibe, Rob, is built on this idea that we have to demand more all the time. I don't know, man. That just doesn't seem fun to me. It doesn't seem fun to be angry all the time. Look, I get angry when my team screws up or doesn't win. I get angry when incompetent people are running my club or my country's national team. But there's something to be said for like, people should be allowed to go out and just have fun watching soccer. And if their team wins, yay. And if their team doesn't, they'll be sad. And then they'll go home. And then the next week they'll go to the game and it happens all over again, right?
Yeah, that's the formula. That's the formula indeed. And I just think that, so I think that with it being that passion and that level of commitment comes from multiple generations of this thing being in your family. Like, my dad bled for this team.
And we're also not in a
it's like,
place. We're also not in a place where we can trust that our club will exist next year, or we have it in MLS.
yeah, am I going to lose my shit if we're a team that's done next in a couple months? Like NCS and FC fans, like, was anyone like losing their minds this season or that last game, knowing that was probably the last game, or that if there's possibility, like going back to the Lansing Ignite conversation, the writing was on the walls pretty early there that it might not work out. So you can't imagine too much passion just boiling out the ears for someone that
anyway,
it's not an institution. It's not an institution.
And I'm not saying like if you're passionate about your team or you get really upset when they're losing or when it looks like they're going in the wrong direction, that you're wrong. You're not. You absolutely can feel that way, right? I just don't know if I want to equate that to passion. Like that thing, like what is passion is kind of what I'm getting to. Like does passion require that anger? Right? Does passion require you to be on the edge of screaming and yelling or even potentially violence in order for it to be legitimate? Anyway, that's not what we're here. We're here to like just say hi to the ultras and to encourage people to sign up for Morning Kickaround. That's why we're here.
Yeah, that was a great going back to countdown to kickoff and where we kind of started this conversation was I really appreciated coach's mix and balance of eyeball test to analytics, because to your point of people that you don't necessarily trust running your club, I feel like there might be some people stuck behind their computer saying, oh, that guy got this goals to game ratio or goals to minutes ratio, so let's put him on the team. But he's making trips across the country, going to indoor facilities, going to other countries to find players. I think is pretty remarkable and shows the commitment that's going on in Boise. And it's interesting, like American Third Division sending coaches internationally to find players. When has that been the case?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, this is the growth, right? And this is like the slow growth of American soccer that sometimes gets missed, right? The way things happen, getting more professional, getting casting a wider net, being more aggressive, or doing things in a way that I think a lot of people in the rest of the world might take for granted, is something that we're doing now in America. Does that make sense?
Say it again.
Well, I mean, so, obviously in the Nate Miller's case, he looks at players. He's going to Panama. He's scouting. Obviously there's Y-Scout and various other tools that you can use to find players. He mentioned the agent connection. That's long been a thing, right? An agent comes in and goes, I can get you a bunch of players. Don't worry about it. It happens to be all my guys, but still they're going to be great.
Was that was Wasserman Connections what half of MLS squads are made out of, like a few years back?
There's been some things like that. Notoriously in Toronto, Mo Johnston was bringing in a bunch of guys that he was connected to through agencies and things like that. There have been allegations. I'm not making any specific ones. Allegations of kickbacks for players getting signed to certain clubs, to managers, to coaches, to GMs. And like that, again, that's not unique to American soccer. That happens around the world.
Yeah, when a player's little brother or a player who clearly doesn't look at the level becomes a member of a team, there, you raise your eyebrows. There's some question marks there.
Yeah, but what I was saying was listening to Nate talk and recognizing the context of a team from Boise, Idaho, getting ready for their very first season. Now, when you're in the flushes of getting off the ground, right, and you're going to spend more money now ahead of revenue than you're ever going to spend, right? Boise is going to, one day there might be more money coming in and they'll add money to the pot to spend on scouting and everything else. But what I'm saying is you got to spend a bunch of money to get off the ground, right? The startup costs are significant. So they are spending money and they would be spending money, but it's that recognition that a team from Boise, Idaho, which nobody here, even Boise people would tell you, isn't a big city, right? It's not a major market. It's not It's not a place that even people connect with soccer necessarily, although they think, just like a lot of places in America, we probably underrate the soccer culture in Boise, Idaho. But to see a place like Boise, Idaho get a team, and the people involved in that team build a stadium, and the people building the stadium and involved in the team spend money to get a coach who's got experience at the MLS level, and then say, hey, you know what? Can you go to Panama? Or he says, I want to go to Panama. They're like, yeah, sure. Go to Panama, find players. If this is always the thought experiment for me. It's always a thought experiment for me. If you got in a time machine and you went back, I think even a decade, this would work, but 15 years for sure, and 20 years, absolutely. And you found an American soccer fan, and you said to them, or you went to Big Soccer and you started the thread, and you said, in the year 2026, there's going to be a team launching in Boise, Idaho. They're going to have this coach, and he's going to be going off to Panama to scout, and he's going to be scouting players from Brazil, and they're going to have a stadium that's going to seat 10,000 people. And people would say, you're insane. What are you talking about? That is never going to happen in American soccer. That is ridiculous. You're clearly out of your mind. Obviously, you're out of your mind because you say you can predict the future. But beyond that, that'll never happen. And yet here we are. It's happening. Now, there's obviously bad things that come with fast growth. We've seen clubs shut down. We've seen delays on launches. There are things. But for the most part, the tide keeps rising. Right? The tide keeps rising. And I think Morning Kickaround being where it is right now is an element or a function of that. Like Morning Kickaround is chronicling, and yeah, Nate said sometimes we see stadium renderings and not everything happens, but man, we got to keep trying, right? You got to keep going.
And I think, yeah, we're going to be taking I think over the next couple of years, we're going to be taking a lot of positive and negative news in with the whole pro rel coming in, adding a new league, mass expansion. I really do think that we're going to try to find, hopefully we're in the plus minus of it. We're going to gain teams, lose teams. Some plans go astray. Some plans over deliver. And I just think this next few years, we'll have to almost, acknowledge that I think this period we're in will get messy, but ultimately the mess is a positive because, like you said, you say this 15, 20 years ago that there is 3 divisions of professional soccer with an expansion and stadiums and all those things. You wouldn't have believed it. So while it might be messy, I think it's positive.
People might have believed you if you said there's going to be competing leagues and one of them is going to be involved in real estate speculation, and there's going to be, they would have like, oh yeah, that sounds exactly right. I completely believe that could happen. So it's a mixed bag, right? We are unique. And I don't know, like there are definitely things we can point out and say that's wrong and it shouldn't happen that way, or I would prefer we do it a different way. But man, like in a general sense, we shouldn't be apologizing for the way American soccer has grown. And while we can always demand more, we shouldn't let the demanding more stop us from recognizing the progress we've made or stop us from enjoying that progress.
That's a good point. Enjoying where we're at now, because especially in the summer amateur, the elite amateur, where it's just a condensed season and everything happens all at the same time. And there's plenty of things you can pick out, some teams not doing as much as others, or you wish that maybe there was more people doing this, that, or the other, but you have to just sit back and enjoy sometimes. Like there is an amateur league where there's 8 teams all in the same state, all playing against each other. I'm talking about here in Michigan. And just the fact that there's that, it's almost a throwback of the old baseball days. Like we're traveling on the train going from town to town playing soccer, and it's a soccer thing, not a baseball.
That's what the Medford story today made me think of. It made me think that again, and I've made this comparison before. I think we've talked about it. The idea that this is sort of a minor league baseball thing. Like it's, minor league baseball still exists, although it's had some travails recently. I think that, baseball as a whole is relatively healthy, but, especially with the rule changes at the major league level and everything, but there's still this idea that baseball is losing its cachet. And as the population ages and some of the people who love baseball, leave our plane of existence, that there's going to be a new wave of people who are maybe more soccer tied in. And that's why, again, I do think that this speaks exactly to what Papadakis and USL are doing, which is to recognize soccer's on the come up. We got a lot of young people who might be interested in it. We got a lot of towns who are trying to find ways to either replace baseball or want to be professional sports towns, but baseball is not the right fit. We can go in, pitch them on this idea of starting a professional soccer club. And if we get a bunch of teams in the same region, we're doing ourselves a favor by regionalizing our league anyway. So there's that. American Groundhopper had that comment that I put on screen about another pro league. Now, I do think we're a little ways from that. Although, look, if you've got 2 first divisions, which is the possible future, a second division and a third division, we know League for Clubs is launching their semi-pro division, which won't be U.S. soccer sanctioned, but there could be a way in for that to become part of this. So, I don't know. Again, linking up all these individual organizations that do their own stuff, right? We're a very league-focused country, not a club-focused country, meaning the origin for how things happen is we're going to start a league, and then they find clubs instead of we've got a bunch of clubs, let's make a league. Although that's what League for Clubs did, and maybe that's a change in the dynamic, a change in the way that this is done. I don't know. There's so many things that could happen out of this, and what we do want though is stable leagues run by smart people who are not getting too far ahead of themselves in how this goes, because you don't want to see the leagues collapse. We don't need another NASL. We absolutely do not.
No, and hopefully there's some safeguards being followed and not getting too out over the skis. But this might be a little bit late in the show to bring up this question, but you're talking about maybe baseball's losing its cachet and the minor league system where you're basically sending players up to the big league team, the big city team. I'm curious if the municipal pride aspect of these teams just playing for their own town and not being connected to the bigger city. I wonder if Papadakis is putting that into his pitches. And I wonder if that appeals to teams or cities like Medford and other small cities that are in these negotiations. I wonder if that means something to them.
The only thing here, right? And somebody will maybe meme this. You just don't want this to be a monorail situation, right? You just don't want this to be that they come in, they pitch the town on this thing, and it turns out to all be a boondoggle, to all be a waste, especially if there are public dollars involved, right? So, and what we don't know yet, what we've got is the reporting that Alex Papadakis is going to make a presentation in Medford, Oregon tonight, that they have a stadium that they have identified as a potential home for a USL League One team. Now, if they don't have to spend extra money to make it happen, then fine, right? Maybe this is already kind of on its way, but they still don't have, as far as we know, an ownership group. Like, they don't have somebody who's going to foot the bill to launch the club, pay the players, pay for the marketing, do all those things, right? And we know that USL has gone into cities, paid for the report, paid for the analysis, paid for the things necessary for a city to say, yep, this is something we want to do. Like dropping $100,000, right, on doing the report to see if this is viable. And that's fine. But again, it's got to be rooted in real life success in the future. And what does that look like? What is success, right? If you zero out, you don't make any money, but you don't lose any money. Is that good enough, right?
We shall see. We shall see. Hashtag no one's farm team, I think, is what.
No one's farm team. That's a good one. I like
that's
that.
One we haven't leaned in too much, but AB Alta was the team that brought that to us, and I think that's a good rallying cry. And I'm curious if Papadakis is using that in his pitches, but we shall see. We will follow along, and we should continue this conversation on Friday, perhaps.
Yeah. We're coming back on Friday. Before we head out today, I do want to again shout out to Zach and Mountains to Sea FC out of North Carolina for sending me this very cool jersey. If you send me a jersey, I will wear it on Morning Kickaround. Pretty clear. I've got a bunch of shirts I can wear, but I always like new stuff. This one is very nice. I actually like the collar on this, and I'm not usually a collar guy. I think it's the buttons that make it, because if you do a collar with no buttons and it just kind of flaps open, that's not my thing. Well, we want to thank everybody for support of the show. If you're not an ultra, consider becoming an ultra. It's just a couple bucks a month, access to the Discord, your comments on screen, access to bonus things, to extra time segments that we sometimes do after shows when we have time. We are working up a concept right now that I think we're going to tell the ultras about in the Discord. We're not going to drop any real significant hints here, right, Rob? Is that the
Yeah,
way?
yeah. We got something cooking up for after the Super Bowl, something big for 2026.
After the Super Bowl, working on something. We also have now. We did today AC Boise. I believe that was episode number 3 for AC Boise. So we're ticking along. We still are working on getting the New York Cosmos back on the show for their next episode of Countdown to Kickoff, in conversations with their people to look for their kit maker, their kit designer. Giuseppe Rossi is going to be on this show to talk about the soccer things that are happening in North Jersey. I imagine we'll be talking to some other people who are interested in learning more about how they're putting their stadium together. Historic Hinchcliffe Stadium in Paterson, New Jersey. We're going to look into that. Things you don't think about, we want to learn about. And, of course, Atletico Dallas is also signed up to be a part of the Countdown for Kickoff. We've already talked to Sam Morton once. I think we're working with Sam to get some stuff back on the show for Atletico Dallas. And I'm going to write about that for my newsletter this week, because I'm fascinated by what it will be like to have an MLS team in the same market as a USL championship team, especially when that USL championship team is much closer to city center and sort of the more densely populated areas of the market than the MLS team, right? So it's a very interesting dynamic that may say a lot about where we are in American soccer if both teams can be successful in the Metroplex.
Yeah, not even to mention a bigger venue there in Dallas with the Cotton Bowl outside in the Dallas FC Dallas Stadium. But great show. Again, thank you to Mr. Shovelfoot for becoming our new member during the show, and Mr. B for donating a super thanks. Much appreciated to that. And then in the short term, as far as previews go, Friday, we are going to see some exciting new kit designs from a USL2 expansion team. So I'm excited for that. There's some potentially groundbreaking kit designs coming up on the show on Friday.
And something that didn't make the show today, but I think we need to talk about is what's happening in Fresno. Somebody in the chat mentioned Fresno. We'll come back around on Fresno.
All right, guys, we'll be back on Friday. And until then, stay safe and enjoy your soccer.